Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you my first NHL mock draft of the offseason. We're not quite in the offseason yet, but for all the non-playoff team fans like myself as a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, it's now draft season. You're waiting for the draft, you're evaluating some of the draft prospects, seeing who you could get in your range. This mock draft will not have any lottery. I won't do a lottery spin on Tankathon here. I'll just straight picking where you finished in the standings. I'm going to probably do one right after the lottery and then maybe one right before the draft as the draft comes closer and we start to know a little more. But this is just the first preliminary mock draft now that we have the final standings for the bottom 16 teams. And for the top 16 teams in the playoffs, you'll just use their regular season standings to determine their pick order. So let's jump right on into it. First overall pick, San Jose Sharks, finishing last again. There's been some rumors going around that they might trade this pick if they get a good enough haul, and Mike Greer's been taking calls or at least listening, not looking to trade it, but if someone calls, they'll listen. I don't get it. I think this is the perfect spot. Trade next year's first. You want to trade further down the line, maybe some other prospects or something, sure. But here, at first of all, I'm taking Matthew Schaefer, and that is the perfect player to round out your future pool of talent. I mean, you add Matthew Schaefer into a prospect pool that already has Will Smith and Michael Celebrini coming up. William Eklund's a great player. Sam Dickinson's great on the back end. You have so many great talents. Yaroslav Askarov in net. Quinn Musty's played really well. Players just coming out constantly, just pumping through prospects. Or Igor Chernyshov had a great season this year. You have so many prospects. You're really missing is that solid, reliable, number one franchise defenseman to lock it down and give you a good offense. Just guy who can eat minutes and do everything you want. Dickinson is great. I loved that pick last year, and it's looking solid right now. But he's more offensively inclined. He's going to be your power play quarterback. He's going to be a good top four defenseman, probably a top pair guy, but not the defensively reliable guy you want. Matthew Schaefer is that and more. He's such an elite prospect. I have him ranked as the number one prospect in this draft. I don't see that changing from now until draft time. Just so amazing. Even in he played very few games in the juniors, but he was just so spectacular. He was obviously the best player on the ice for playing as an underager. He was the best player on Team Canada. And just the way the Team Canada team changed when he was out, the way their offense slowed down, the way their breakout slowed down, everything just took a step back because he wasn't there to facilitate it. He was, coming into the year, he was a candidate for number one. He wasn't the favorite by any means. But the big question mark was, could he develop some sort of offensive skill set? And he really has. I think he's just the ideal two-way defenseman who can do everything you want them to do on the back end. Super smart, super physical, able to win puck battles cleanly, and then is a really amazing transition defender. Good at breakout passes, good at working through the neutral zone, good break-ins, and really good at walking the line and setting up offense from the blue line. He's got great hands, great skills, great mind, really just a beautiful prospect. And I think San Jose would be foolish to not just take him here at 1. And they're in a lucky spot because at number 2, you got the Chicago Blackhawks. And I have them taking Michael Misa. They both these teams have a very clear need in their young pool of players. The Blackhawks, they need that superstar level, that star talent to play next to Connor Bedard, to give him some support, whether it's on his line or just support down the lineup to help alleviate some of the pressure he's feeling and some of the pressure he has to get everything done on his line. And Michael Misa is that guy. So if the Blackhawks picked at 1, I think they would still go Misa. So for both Chicago and San Jose, as long as no one hops the both of you, you both end up with the prospect you probably want in Misa and Schaefer. Because I think, if Hawks are at 1, they're taking Misa. If Sharks are at 1, they're taking Schaefer. And then at 2, you're still getting the guy you would have taken at 1 anyways. So it's kind of worked out really well for both those teams if that's the direction they go. I believe that's where both teams should be going, because I believe that's where their flaws lie inside their pools and in their future. At number 3, it's a really weird team that nobody would have expected to be here. It's the Nashville Predators at the 3rd overall pick. And this is where the draft starts to get a little interesting. It seemed pretty clear on who this was going to be. I had pretty much chalked it down to a top 4 of Schaefer, Misa, Higgins, and Martone. But that 3-4-5 range has gotten really muggy recently. It's really gotten shaken up. A lot of different people are coming out with different thoughts, and rankings are starting to get a little not as consensus as we get closer to the draft time, oddly enough, as people are seeing different things in different players. And I think Higgins, as much as he's had a good season at Boston College this year, he didn't really drive the line at BC with Gabe Pro and Ryan Leonard as much as people were hoping. But then again, it's a tough ask when Ryan Leonard's on that line. He is a line driver, especially at that level. So tough ask. He had a good season, but just not the great season people were really expecting of him. But he is still going to be my pick here at 3. I think the Preds are pretty much in best player available mode. They have a okay prospect pool. It's just solid. It's nothing special, no real top end guys. Their team right now, it's good, but it's just not, it's got pieces, but it's not enough. I think they could use a playmaking centerman to boost their lineup. In maybe not quickly. I think he'll probably go back to BC for another year and then come over to the NHL. But regardless, it's a good thing to have in their pool. Their pool lacks a true playmaking centerman like that. They have David Edstrom here, who they got in the Yaroslav Askarov trade, who's a really good two-way centerman, but he projects more as a middle sixer. They don't, like, Ryan O'Reilly's solid for them, but I mean, he's not exactly young, and if they're trying to retool or rebuild, he's not really your centerman of the future, per se. So they do have a need there. Their top prospects are Matt Wood and Joakim Kamel, both guys who are really good scorers, but they're both wingers. They need someone to facilitate that offense in the middle down the stretch, and I think that will be James Higgins. And even if those guys aren't up at the same time, if Higgins comes in a little sooner, Philip Forsberg is a great shooter. You obviously picked up Steven Stamkos, who plays center, but he's moved more to the wing later in his career. Having a guy like Higgins making the plays for them in the middle of the ice could be a really solid thing for the Preds moving forward. I think it's a solid fit. At number 4, it's Philadelphia, and this is a weird one. I think they would be dreaming of James Higgins here. They're really hoping that the Preds decide to go a different direction, because I think they need a centerman desperately in their pool to play, a player to pair with Matvei Michkov. And Porter Martone would be a decent fit if they didn't both play on the right side. You could flip one, it wouldn't be the worst thing, but I think they have just an abundance of wingers. They're going to be I think Philly's looking to kind of not turn it around too quickly, but their players are young and NHL ready, and they have a bunch of prospects coming up. But they're heavy on the wing. Their depth down the middle, it's not exactly like ideal. It's no one that you're really going to be like, yeah, it's a long-term top 6 center. I mean, it's Sean Couturier. Noah Cates, I think, is more of a good middle 6, third line guy. Ryan Poehling isn't really doing you much. And down the wing, they're really good. They got really good wingers for now and for the future down the wing. Michkov, Konechny, Forster, Brink, Pelletier, and Tippett are all really solid pieces. You have Jetlachenko coming up. He's a centerman. He'll project there. But I think, again, that's more of a second-line guy. Denver Barkey in the system, another winger. I think they really need a center. So I'm going to give them Anton Frundell here at 4. It's not exactly a perfect fit next to Michkov because they are both typically shoot-first guys. But I think you fill the hole you have in your pool and in your long-term plans, and that's a centerman who can facilitate your offense. I think both Frundell and Michkov have some solid playmaking abilities within them. I think if you develop that side of things with either of them, you can get a pretty good duo here. If not, you have 2 scorers you can kind of stagger in your line in your top 6, and you end up with a pretty good top 6 for the future. So I really like the fit. I don't really like the fit, but I think it's the right fit for the Flyers, so I'll give them Anton Frundell. And he's been rising a lot in draft boards. I think there's a lot of talk of him being thrown into that 3rd overall pick conversation due to the run he's been on playing over in Sweden. He's been really good in the playoffs, and has just, ever since he's kind of found his step in the new year, found his game again, he's been really an excellent player there. Now, Boston at number 5, their prospect pool is just the definition of a bare prospect pool. There's almost nothing there. They've made a couple moves to pick up some players. Got Fraser Minton from the Leafs, a couple other guys they picked up that were solid. Some solid young players, Marat Kusnedinov, Will Zellers is really a decent pickup. But their pool is not very good. I mean, Dean Latour had a really disappointing year at BC. Fabian Lysell still has not broken into the NHL as he was expected to this year, even though he had there was a clear path for him to get in. He just still couldn't make the impact they were looking for. They're just BPA, and BPA here is clearly Porter Martone, in my opinion. Perfect player to be the top end of your prospect pool, to be the future of your team. Play him with David Pastrnak in a couple of years down the line. But I think Porter Martone's a great fit. I think he's slipped a little bit in boards, but I still really like him as a player. I still think he's a great talent, and he's going to be an excellent player at the NHL level. At number 6, it's the Seattle Kraken, and I was wrong last year with them. I thought, I was all through the draft, I was like, oh, they're going to take a defenseman. There's no way a defenseman is going to go to Seattle. It's defenseman. And they didn't. They took Berkeley Catton, and it just worked out well. Berkeley Catton looks like an absolute stud. I loved Berkeley Catton coming in. I just wasn't sure if the fit was there in Seattle. But, I mean, hey, he's a great player. He's going to be a great piece for them. But now you got to go defenseman. You really do. The top 5 players are off the board. Everyone further down the board here now is starting to have some certain question marks about, what kind of impact they can make. And you're starting to question things. They're not such surefire things. And like I said, your young core is so offense heavy. Riker Evans is a really good, solid defenseman for you now and for down the line. Then in the system, Lucas Dragicevic is okay. Ty Nelson's had a good season this year. But it's Shane Wright, Matty Beniers, Ty Cartier's solid. You got Jeremy McCann, who's still young if you decide to keep him around. Berkeley Catton, Carson Rakoff, Jaeger Furcus, Edward Schala, Yanni Neiman played really well for them this year. You just don't need another forward. It would become a bit of a logjam, and when you have an opportunity to take a good defenseman like they do here, you do it. I haven't taken Radim Murtka. He's been a big riser, going to be an absolute minute muncher at the NHL level. Big, strong, physical defenseman who's taken them some time and has adapted to the North American ice this year, coming over from Europe to play for Seattle in the WHL. He's had a really good season this year, and I project him as a really good top 4 defenseman for Seattle. I think it'd be a perfect player to add to this pool. At number 7 is the Buffalo Sabres, who are yet again given a lottery pick, and it's just, they still have a lot of prospects, and their team is young and deep, and I really don't know where to go with them. I think if Murtka was here, I do think Buffalo would take him because they have a great defense pool, or a great group of young defensemen, but they're heavy on the left side. Byram, Power, Dahlin, Samuelson are all left shots. On the right side, it's a little thinner. It's not a lot going on there. Murtka's a right shot defenseman. I think that the Sabres would absolutely be taking him in this boat. But if he's not there, you're not going to reach on Keyshawn Aitchison or Jackson Smith, especially being they're both left shot guys. So you're probably looking forward here. And you have so many forward options. So I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to have the Sabres taking the risk on Roger McQueen. I think Roger McQueen is a great prospect, and he's so talented and would be in more conversation into that top 5, top 3, maybe even, if he didn't have the back injury. I also think even if he had that back injury but we didn't see what just happened with Caden Lindstrom this year, he would still be in that conversation just like Caden Lindstrom was last year. People overlooked the injury. People were like, it'll be fine. It's not a big deal. Blue Jackets take him. Misses the entire season. That's just brutal for his development. It's a brutal break. He's getting better, and he's expected to be potentially back soon for the playoffs for Medicine Hat. But it's still a major risk. And knowing that Roger McQueen has a similar injury, he is already back and playing, and he's looked pretty solid since coming back. But the risk is there. So you got to find a team that's willing to take that shot and can afford to take that risk. Maybe Buffalo isn't that team that can afford to take a risk because you need something to turn around quickly. But at the same time, their pool is so deep and so good and so talented that if you miss on this pick, you still have a great group of young players to build around. You have other issues. This draft pick isn't going to magically fix all your issues that you have in your organization right now. So you can afford to take that risk and grab the high upside player who could be an absolute monster for you. A line of Roger McQueen with Tage Thompson on his wing is unbelievably just stupid to think about. Those two at their size and their skill would be super good. So it's a risk. It's definitely an absolute risk, and Roger McQueen is going to be a real wild card in this draft. He could slip, he could rise very high being a 6'5", skilled forward, but he could also fall really far due to the injury. So really going to be a wild card in this draft, but I've got him going here at 7 to the Sabres. At number 8, we move on to the Anaheim Ducks, and I'm going to have them taking Victor Eklund. Another team that maybe would take a shot on Murtka if he was here, but I really like Victor Eklund. I think the Ducks have a ton of center depth, Connor Gauthier, Leo Carlson. We'll see if Zegers really sticks at center. I don't know if he will. Mason McTavish, though, the other one. Those three could all be surefire centers at the NHL level. A winger would be nice, a real winger, not just a guy you flip over to the wing. Victor Eklund is that. Victor Eklund is also just one of my favorite prospects in this draft. I think he is absolutely amazing. Until just recently, I had him as the 5th ranked prospect. I made the flip of Frundell over Eklund recently, but I'm in love with Victor Eklund's game. Super physical, super strong player. He's small, but he plays a super hard game, always giving 110% effort, grinds it out, and has got tons of skill to go along with that. I really like this player, and I think Anaheim's getting a bit of a solid steal here. It's good value at the 8th overall pick. At number 9, the Pittsburgh Penguins, I've got them scooping up Caleb Desnoyers here. Pretty run that card up. It's pretty easy at this point. This is sort of like right before that tier break. I love Desnoyers as a prospect. I think he's going to be a really solid top 6 centerman. The Penguins don't have a real future. Maybe you could project Desnoyers as a 1C. It's not really a lock by any means. It's not like he's going to, it's not like Michael Misa. He's top 6, but has that first line center potential. So I could see it. And yeah, Rutger McGrory sort of made the shift over to a full-time winger, and Billy Quavin's a winger. Their main prospects are wingers here. Desnoyers could be your future centerman of the future to play between those guys or with one of them. But I think he'd be a great fit. And Pittsburgh's really in a best player available kind of situation. Just take the best guy here. The pool is good. It's gotten a lot better, but you just need the top end talent to top it off. Their pool is really good. All they lack is that elite piece, and Caleb Desnoyers can be that. So you just take the best player on the board and get your future top piece of your pool. At number 10 of the team, in a similar situation with a bit worse of a prospect pool, it's the New York Islanders. They made a good move to get Cal Ritchie this offseason. They scooped up Cole Eiserman at last year's draft. They just need the best player available to help continue to grow that prospect pool. They're not in a position to kind of be looking for filling needs in their pool. Just take the best guy. To me, that's Jake O'Brien, extremely skilled playmaking centerman. I would love him in Pittsburgh, to be honest, but if Caleb Desnoyers falls to 9, I am scooping him up without question. But now the Islanders are happy with Jake O'Brien. Gives you 2 solid options for the future down the middle with Callum Ritchie and Jake O'Brien. That would be a real solid duo. One of them can play with Cole Eiserman. Either one could do it and feed him and make him into the elite goal scorer you project him as. So a really good fit here to the Islanders at number 10. At 11, the New York Rangers. This is an interesting spot because the Rangers could give this pick up to the Penguins, and that puts it in a weird spot. I think the real question mark for New York is how good do you think he'll be next year? Because if you use this pick and you're bad next year and you have a lottery pick, you're giving the Pittsburgh Penguins a Gavin McKenna ball. That might not be something they want to sacrifice. They might be more willing to just say, you know what, take the 11th overall pick and we'll keep the chance at a McKenna ball. That's how valuable a draft lottery ball for Gavin McKenna is going to be next year, is that the Rangers might rather just give the 11th overall pick for the risk of potentially being in that spot next year. No guarantees. In this, I'm just going to have them sticking and picking with the 11th overall pick because it is a top 13 protection. But yeah, they have the choice of what they want to do. So could really backfire on them if they make the wrong decision down the line. But yeah, I would not mind at all if they didn't give us the 11th overall pick and the Rangers want to have a terrible season and win the lottery next year and Pittsburgh got the 1-1. But in this world, yeah, 11th overall pick. I got him taking Lyndon Lakovic. I think he's best player on the board. The Rangers have a really solid defense group of defensemen. I don't think they need a Jackson Smith. I don't think they need a Keishon Aitchison. Keishon Aitchison is like a more chaotic, aggressive version of EJ Emery, who they drafted last year. He's a higher upside, but he plays a more wild game. EJ Emery's a real shutdown guy, but Aitchison plays a great defensive game and is really good at just causing havoc. They don't need another one of those. I think they got a solid group of defensemen coming up. Their forwards need an extra punch. I think you hope they can actually develop one in Gabe Perreault, but I still think they need some more punch up front in their pool. I think Lyndon Lakovic is that kind of guy. He's performed really well this year, and Moose Jaw had a good breakout year despite Moose Jaw being terrible after they lost all their pieces because they went all out to win the WHL last year, and it worked. They won the WHL, didn't get very far in the Memorial Cup, but it is what it is. But yeah, really solid player here for the Rangers to add to their pool. At number 12, the Red Wings. This was a tough one. I went back and forth a lot on this pick. Really wasn't sure where to go. They've got a lot of good pieces in the pool. Trying to figure out what the Stevie Y pick is tough. Last year, I think it was pretty. Everyone thought it was going to be like Michael Branson-Nygaard was a pretty common mock for the Red Wings, and it ended up happening. But it's tough. Where do you look? What do you need on this team? Because they just can't get over the hump. So I really don't know what the Red Wings are thinking or where their mind is at here. But I ended up going with Jackson Smith. I think he's the best player on the board with the least question marks. I think there's other players slightly better, but has question marks. We'll get to him in a couple picks here. But yeah, Jackson Smith's really solid. He's gone on a great hot streak to end the regular season in the WHL for Tri-City. Had a really good stretch there of putting up good production, but he's a really good two-way defenseman who does well on both sides of the ice. Good at facilitating offense, and yeah, he started scoring actual goals and getting pucks in the net on his own at the end of the year, so that's a positive thing. But it gives you your top four of the future. Axel Sandin-Pellikka and Moritz Seider on the right side, Simon Edmondson and Jackson Smith over on the left side. That is an absolutely just phenomenal set of defensemen for the future. You're set there. You don't need anything else, and they don't really have that fourth guy. I think Jackson Smith projects perfectly as that fourth guy in a defense core where he really won't be needed to do a whole lot besides just play a good, safe game alongside either Sandin-Pellikka or Moritz Seider. But I like the fit here. I think it gives you a good top four for the next 10 years, really. Columbus up here at number 13 after coming so close to the playoffs. They still end up with 13th overall pick because the Western Conference had a couple teams finished a little higher than them. So I've got them taking Keishon Aitchison here. I think they have a ton up front that's really young and really promising. I really did struggle hard. I thought maybe they could go Carter Bear, but the risk involved that is in Carter Bear, which is who I was talking about. He's not going yet, but the risk involved in terms of a player who just tore his Achilles, so how long will that recovery take? How will it affect his development? You just took Caden Lindstrom had an injury concern and it backfired on you. There's no way you do it twice. And even without Caden Lindstrom, their top-end talent up front is really broke out this year. A lot of great players had great seasons. Kirill Marchenko was a big breakout star. Adam Fantilli led his draft class in goals this year, ahead of the likes of Matvei Michkov and Connor Bedard. He hit 30 goals. Kent Johnson had a really good year. A lot of really solid players stepped up for you this year, and you have a lot of good pieces up front in your system. And Carter Bear is a little undersized scoring winger. You have three of those down, you have 3 or 4 of those in your prospect pool right now, with Jordan Dumais and Luca Delbel-Blues, Gavin Brindley especially, Luca Pinelli too. Luca Pinelli's not really that same style, but you get my point. Smaller, undersized forwards, along with the guys you have up right now. I don't think it's a good fit. I think you have Keishon Aitchison. He's basically the replacement in your pool for David Jiricek, who you traded away. And you get a great player here in Keishon Aitchison, who can be a really good shutdown defenseman for you in the future. At number 14, the Utah Hockey Club, I have them taking Carter Bear. Another tough one. Carter Bear was one that talked to me a few of these picks ahead, but the Achilles is a big concern. So you got to find the right team to take that shot and take that risk with their draft pick. I think Utah's that team. Really good prospect pool, had a really good, solid developmental season for a lot of the young pieces this year. Guys like Gunther and Cooley played really well. Clayton Keller's obviously a stud. And you have a really good pool of players in your system. Josh Doan has been up and down a little bit, but you have him around. Daniel Boot had a really good year. So you got a lot of players, and you still have a decent bunch of picks from the Arizona rebuild. Over the next 2-3 years, you still have a decent chunk of top 3 round picks. So you can build up a lot of prospects. You can afford to take this risk. And if this risk hits, you have a great player in Carter Bear, an elite scorer who's got just tons and tons of skill, just boatloads of skill. You're going to be a really good player to add to this prospect pool. At number 15, Vancouver, I was thinking this might be a tough pick, but Justin Carbonneau was on the board at the top of my board. I was like, oh, you know what? This is almost your perfect, not quite perfect, but it's a Brock Besser replacement. A great scoring top 6 winger who just puts pucks to the back of the net. Odds are good, if everything we've been hearing, Brock Besser's gone in the offseason, he's going to sign somewhere else. Justin Carbonneau is a great scoring winger who you can put in your, he won't be up right away, but down the line will be a really good player to fill that void that you're going to have left by Brock Besser. So I like this fit in Vancouver a lot. Now the last lottery pick here at number 16 is the Montreal Canadiens via the Calgary Flames via the Sean Monahan deal a couple of years back. That one really backfired for Calgary, but they still have 2 first-round picks coming up here, so they ended up doing all right for themselves. But yeah, Montreal here, I'm going to give them Brady Martin. I think you have such a talented pool of players. Their prospect pool and the young players they have up at the NHL level, it's amazing. Nick Suzuki's your 1C, and you got Juraj Slafkovsky, Cole Caulfield, obviously Ivan Demidov. Then you have Michael Hage as your next centerman here. I like adding Brady Martin. Gives you options at that 2C spot of what you prefer more. Michael Hage, more of that skill-first, talented to centerman. Brady Martin, more of that driver, physical, fast, good, hard skater, hard worker kind of guy. More of that not gritty, because Brady Martin has tons of skill, but sort of that it's a slightly different style in the way they play comparatively. So you get those options in the middle. Obviously, you still like Alex Newhook, who's, if he can, continue to grow. He played really well with Demidov in his debut. You have Kirby Doc if he can stay healthy. But I think you really do need some of those surefire things. And if worse comes to worse, you kick one to the wing and it's not the end of the world. I think Brady Martin would be a really good fit here in Montreal. And then at 17, it's Montreal once again, back-to-back picks. This is their own pick here. And I've got them taking Logan Hensler, the right shot defenseman out of Wisconsin. Hensler didn't have a great draft year. Wisconsin wasn't a really good hockey team, though, so it wasn't really all his fault. But I project him to be a really good, shutdown defenseman at the next level, and I think that's something the Habs could use along the right side where Hensler plays. We're notified basically as the season ended that David Savard is going to retire after this year, which is kind of a little bit of a surprise. Obviously, Hensler's not going to be an immediate replacement, but it gives you that long-term right side shutdown defenseman to pair next to Lane Hudson, because he's going to need that support. As much as Lane Hudson had a great year, the defense will always be a bit of a question mark for him, so give him someone who can help shelter that sort of side of the puck, and I think that would be Logan Hensler in a really great fit here in Montreal. Give you some boost on the top end of your pool on the forward side, and give you some boost at the top end of the defense side with these 2 first-round picks. And now Calgary has their first-round pick here. This is what they got from the Devils and the Jacob Markstrom deal. And I've got them keeping the Calgary Hitmen player in Calgary by taking Ben Kindle. The offense is what the Flames need. They just drafted Zane Parekh. He will help the offense a lot. But yeah, you need some scoring punch in your pool of players, in your young pool of players. There had a lot of call-ups happen recently, so pieces are moving out of that prospect pool. But I think getting Ben Kindle, who's pretty much just he can do everything for you offensively, a little bit undersized, but again, great scoring forward. Can score goals himself, great playmaker, just does it all on the offensive side of the puck. And I think they just need an offense-first kind of guy, because just Dustin Wolf willed them to the playoffs with his elite defending, despite them being a bottom 5 team in goals per game. So you need some offense down the line. You're still building towards the future, despite having a really good season this year. The future is still your goal, despite overperforming this year. You still have to be thinking long-term here, and that's Ben Kindle. I think that's the right fit. St. Louis Blues at 19. It's another tough one. St. Louis got a lot of solid young pieces. I ended up going with Braden Coots. I think Braden Coots is really a great player, and he's just such a pest. He's going to be, again, smaller player, but he's just plays so hard. One of the best forecheckers in this entire draft, skates really hard, plays at both ends of the ice really, really well, and just, an absolute nuisance to play against on the ice. Just really makes your life a living hell out there. So I think that's a great player for St. Louis to add down the middle. Dalibor Dvorsky, Robbie Thomas down the middle. Put Braden Coots in that third line for the future. You're going to have a really good trio of centers, and they all do a lot of different things well. So it gives you a real good balance up and down your lineup. Columbus here, back up at 20 with the pick they got from Minnesota in the David Jiricek trade. And I've got them taking Malcolm Spence here. I grabbed a defenseman with Cation Aitchison at the top. Now grabbing a winger in Malcolm Spence. There's a lot of potential in Malcolm Spence, but he just hasn't really reached his developmental goals that we were expecting of him after being a high OHL draft pick. He really is just kind of not plateaued, because it's way too early to say that, but he hasn't really taken that next step, that leap people were hoping for, myself included. I was really high on him coming into the year, and he's kind of slipped down my board. But I think it's a really good fit here in Columbus. I mentioned there you got a lot of players playing really well up front. A lot of them are centermen. Get yourself another winger here. I just think it's a solid fit and kind of best player available for me at this spot. At 21, the Ottawa Senators, they have another interesting situation here. They could give this pick up as a part of the Dadonov punishment. I very well could see them, especially if they win in the playoffs. I think this could be the pick they just opt to give it up and not have it loom over your head, especially in a McKenna draft year, because I think it was either last year, this year, or next year. And those are the 3 years they have to choose from. I don't think they can do it in the year after. So 3 years to choose from. Your options here are just give up this pick. You know what it is. You know it's nothing special. The depth of this draft class isn't spectacular. Or you risk having a season from hell next year and lose your McKenna ball. Similar to the Rangers, except they have a lot more. Pick 21 is a lot easier to give up than pick 11. So I think the Sens, all odds are, will give this pick up as a part of their punishment. But sticking and picking, giving them Cameron Schmidt, another undersized player. There's a lot of undersized players in this draft. But Cameron Schmidt's a real good scoring player. And I think, a good scorer could be something Ottawa uses. Put him in that. If he can carve out a top 6 role for himself, I think he'd be a real good fit on one of those top lines. Their third line, they have a lot of good third line guys, a lot of middle 6 guys, I think Cameron Schmidt can be a top 6 scorer to pair next to Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk on that top line potentially. That's a bit of a stretch short of goal for him, but a top 6 player who can add some scoring punch in that lineup, which I think they might need in the future with a lot of their scores in the top. David Perron, Claude Giroux, they're not going to be around forever, so have that guy in there to help facilitate some more offense in the future if they stick and pick here. Calgary up again with the Florida Panthers pick. This is from the Matthew Tkachuk trade. I got them taking Cameron Reed, another offensively minded defenseman. Again, I think your defense is really good, and you add Zane Parekh there. You still have Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Anderson. If I would assume he sticks around. He seems to like it in Calgary. I think they put an effort in to keep him around. But you have a lot of really good defensemen, a lot of players who can help defensively. But you need a little extra boost. I think you need something more in that D-core, especially along the left side, because that's where a lot of their problems are defensively. If you look at the way they're set up right now, Weegar can play both sides and does play both sides, but he's a right shot guy. Rasmus Anderson's a right shot guy. Zane Parech's a right shot guy. Hunter Brustevich, Henry's the prospect in this year. Hunter Brustevich, right shot guy. Cameron Reed's a left shot guy. Give you a little bit of boost for the future on that left side because you really have almost no one right now. So I think it's a good fit. And again, they got to help facilitate offense. You have your good shutdown guys. You have your good shutdown players, forwards up front. Get a good good scoring threat on the back end. Carolina at number 23. I thought about giving them the first goalie off the board with Kochetkov's struggles and Anderson's age, but I think they'll leave it alone. I've got them taking Ivan Ryabkin. Ivan Ryabkin, another player who could rise and fall depending on what teams want. He's a very divisive prospect, especially being, he didn't have a great year. He had a lot of issues go on for him. He was at the KHL. They didn't want him anymore. He left, came over to the USHL. It's a good year for Muskegon, but hasn't really been excellent. And there's a lot of question marks arising about his game, about his effort level, and some of those more off the ice kind of traits. His on the ice skill is amazing, but character concerns here and there, and effort concerns are coming up. I think Carolina's a great fit, and I think Carolina's going to take that shot and prove they can develop them. They've got a thing for drafting Russians, and they have tons of success drafting Russians. So I really think it's a good fit. I think if there's a coach or an organization that can help get those issues out of your system, it's absolutely the Carolina Hurricanes here. And they'd be the perfect team to do it. I think that's a good fit. I think they're a team willing to take that risk. They got tons of prospects and a great team right now. Why not take the shot in the high upside kid? At 24, it's the first of Philly's back-to-back picks, their second and third picks of the draft. This one's via Edmonton because Edmonton, for some reason, wanted to trade up for 32 in last year's draft. I really don't understand why, but Philly now gets a good pick this year. And I've got them taking Joshua Ravensburger. This is where the first goalie really goes off the board. They need a goalie. They've been looking for one. They've been searching the depths to find one. Sam Erson's solid, but he's not going to win you any real... He's not going to get you very far. I think he's good, but not great. I think he projects more as a 1B. Fedotov has not worked out. Kolosov has not looked good. You really just need a goalie in the system. You have Carson Bjarnason, and he could potentially be something, but he hasn't really developed. He hasn't really looked like amazing in his development. He looked solid, but again, maybe more of a 1B. Ravensburgen's the best goalie prospect in this draft. He's big. He's got good size, good technique. He didn't have the best end of the year, but has had a pretty good season over in Prince George. I like the fit. I think Philly just needs to take the shot on the goalie. You have 3 first-round picks this year and a great young pool of talent. Why not take a goalie with one of your first-round picks? Another backup here with their pick from Colorado that they got. I believe this is the Sean Walker deal last year. And I have them grabbing Blake Fiedler out of Edmonton, playing for the Oil Kings. He's an American player, though, but playing in the WHL and had a pretty good year. Really good, solid, big, shutdown defenseman. I think it's something that the Flyers maybe could use in their system. Cam York's looked solid, and you got Jimmy Drysdale's been iffy. You got Oliver Bonk in the system, but a pure, big, physical shutdown guy that when Nick Seeler starts to decline in a couple of years, he can fill that role in terms of being your second pair, big shutdown shot blocker or hitter on your team. I think that'd be a solid fit for the future down the line. The Nashville Predators up here at 26 with their pick they got in the Tanner Jeannot trade somehow that managed to snag a first-round pick. But yeah, their second pick of the first round, I've got them taking Sasha Boumediene. He didn't have an amazing year at BU this year, but he was also pushed further down the lineup because he was playing with Cole Hudson and Tom Willander. But he still was really solid, looked real reliable, looked real comfortable. He'll go back to college for a couple more years. And, again, for Nashville, so a lot of these other teams that picked at the top of the draft, they grabbed their top end forward talent near the top. Throw a little defense prospect in there because, these players, a lot of these teams just need anything. So, you might have two of your top prospects here with, you add, Nashville doesn't have a ton of D prospects. They also don't have a ton of forward prospects. So you grab James Higgins, grab such a boy Medine, Boston connection, despite them not actually playing for the same team in Boston. But yeah, I think it's a solid fit to add to that defense pool. They don't have a ton coming up besides Tanner Molendyke, so I think it would be a solid fit there. The LA Kings at 27, a team I cannot believe still has their first round pick. I really thought this would be gone for sure. It wouldn't shock me if it's traded before the draft. Maybe it's a bit of a dream for me, but I could see them shipping this pick off with like Liam Greentree, hopefully, for a scoring player like Rickard Rakell. That seems to be the ask on the market for him heading into the deadline. We'll see if it changes over the offseason, but I wouldn't shock me to see them move this pick, especially if they have some success in the playoffs. I'm really shocked that they didn't move to the deadline, but hey, they seem to have been playing pretty well since then, so maybe it was the right call. But I've got him taking Cole Reshny. Cole Reshny, I think, is leading all of the CHL. He's leading the WHL in points in the playoffs right now. He's had an amazing playoff run for Victoria. I think he might be top of the entire CHL, if I'm not mistaken, but he's definitely top of the WHL. Had a really good run. I really like his game. I have him near that, in this range. I've got him ranked at 25 to 27, so I think it's good value, in my opinion, on Cole Reshny. San Jose Sharks at number 28 with the Dallas Stars pick. They got in the Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci deal. Really solid asset management work there by Mike Greer, taking on two dead cap hits and flipping them for a first-round pick just over a year later on Granlund, less than a year later for Cody Ceci. But yeah, really good flip there. I've got him taking Henry Brustevich, the brother of Hunter Brustevich, who I mentioned earlier in the Calgary Flames system. Henry is very similar to Hunter, both extremely skilled, good skating, offensively gifted defenseman. I think, he plays in London. He doesn't play with Sam Dickinson, but it's a good connection that you have there. It gives you two really good offensive defensemen in your system. You have Matthew Schaefer, who took at the top, and you have Leo Salina-Lanius, who is more of a two-way kind of guy. So get a good balance in your pool. Have a lot of options there. Shakir Medulin, obviously, Luca Cagnoni. But I think it's a good fit, and I think you have so many forward prospects. You can throw a couple darts on the defense board, and if you have too many, and you trade one. Oh no, what are you going to do? But I think it's a good fit here in San Jose. Now it's Chicago at 29 with the Toronto Maple Leafs pick from the Jake McCabe deal. I think it was 2 years ago now that they made this deal, and they got the 2025 pick. I'm taking Jack Murtaugh out of the USNTDP. I think he's a really solid, good top 6 potential scoring winger, maybe more of a middle sixer, but again, I think you have your decor of the future with Levshinov, Rinzel, Korchinski, and Alex Vlasic, who might be the best of them all, right? The way he's been playing at the end of the year. Probably more Levshinov, but you get my point. They got really solid top 4, and Nolan Allen in the system, Ethan Del Mastro, lots of defense prospects coming through. You forwards are where you need to address. You need some wingers. You have a lot of good middle guys. Michael Misa now, according to this mock, Bedard, Nazar, Oliver Moore. You have your guys on the middle. Murtaugh's a winger. I don't know if he projects as a top line guy, but still, just get some more punch in that lineup. Get some more future pieces to put up front to help build that culture, build that core. I think Murtaugh's a good fit there. At 30, Nashville is up yet again with the pick they got from Vegas via San Jose. I believe this pick has bounced around. I believe this is the pick Vegas sent to San Jose for Tomas Hertl, that San Jose then sent with David Edstrom for Yaroslav Askarov from the Preds. So the Preds end up with a 30th overall pick here from Vegas. Got him taking Jacob Ish-Wozniak, another player who's been, up and down in draft boards. Seen him as high as like 24, 25, but I've also seen him as low as like 40. He's got a wide range. I've got him at 28 on my board. Have him going here at 30. I think he's skilled, good talent. There is question marks surrounding his all-around ability. Didn't have the best year this year, but I still think he's a really talented prospect. I think Nashville can afford to take that shot, especially with the 2 other first-round picks they have in this draft. Now we had to 31 and 32 are both the top 2 teams in the league, and they stuck with their picks. The 2 teams, they finished as 1 and 2 in the league this year, and they both have their first-round picks still. the Washington Capitals, their prospect pool is stupidly good for how good their roster is playing right now. And they had another first-round pick here. They could trade it, but I think they might just stick and pick and find another stud. I'm picking William Moore. He played alongside Jack Murtaugh over the USNTDP and looked really, really solid. Good playmaking centerman to have in the future. I mean, Washington doesn't need a ton in their pool. They've got Cole Hudson, they got Ryan Chesley on the back end. They got a good set of players right now on the defensive side. Same thing up front, really good core right now. Ilya Protas broke out, Rylander's coming up, Andrew Cristal's amazing. So you're pretty good on both sides of the ice, but this is just kind of BPA for me here at 31. And at 32, Winnipeg Jets. They don't have a great prospect pool. They have an okay pool, and they got a good young team. But I could see them, I think they'll probably stick and pick here. I'm taking Bill Zonin out of Ruin Noranda in the queue. A player who's got obvious flaws in his game, you know, in his mechanics and his skating side of things, but is also a really strong player, really physically strong, and has a lot of good, you know, he's got a good mind and good attributes with his good passing, good playmaking ability, good shot, all that sort of thing. So, you know, I think you can develop some of the mechanical things with him and have him step that side of his game up in Winnipeg. But I think it's just and again, another case of when you get down to this point in the draft, it's a lot harder to project who's going where, because teams take shots on guys they have lower down the board, and teams reach on other guys. You know, that tends to be what happens in this spot when you get into like the 20 to 32 range. We saw it last year. You know, you can try all you want to project some of those players, but they'll fall really far without you expecting it, and someone will just jump up out of nowhere. And that's sort of where we are. So I'm just taking BPA in my book, and that's, you know, that's Bill Zonin for the Winnipeg Jets there. Well, that'll do it for this one. A bit longer than I was hoping it to be, but you know, it's a pretty interesting draft class. Really solid talent, really good talent, I'd say, at the top end of the class. But I think it really does take a step down after around picks 11 and 12. It really takes a dip down, and you get to the end of the first round, and you're not ending up with a lot of like super studs. But I think it's a solid draft class and really an intriguing draft in general. Excited to see how it all plays out. Coming up, I'm going to have my NFL mock draft coming out in the next week. I'm hopefully going to time that up right before the NFL draft. And I'm working on doing my prospect pool rankings at this point in the year, just doing it before the draft, and then, you know, I'll adjust things and do an actual prospect rankings after the NHL draft over this summer, and maybe come back to my prospect pool rankings once these teams have added their 2025 draftees. But that'll do it for this one. Be sure to subscribe and like to see more, and stay tuned for all those other uploads, and I will see you in the next video.